Welcome to Creative Courage Chats, a search for a new understanding of creativity and problem solving. I'm Alex Raffi. So hi everybody, we're starting another Creative Courage Chats here, and here with George Manska. He is an inventor, and so this is my first official talk with an inventor. He's also an entrepreneur, and he has a lot of experience and a lot of wisdom. I've had a lot of chats with him. I think this will be an interesting conversation. So thanks for coming and chatting with me today, George.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here, Alex. Always with you.
Yeah, I'm really kind of interested in. I actually have my glass here. This is the neat glass.
Ah, wonderful.
This is the invention. This is his invention. I have the green screen, so it makes it a little tricky to see here a little bit. But I was wondering if you wanted to. What I'll do is I'll also show a video, maybe. You got it. Right, there you go. I was thinking maybe also in this showing a clip of maybe a video of what the neat glass is and what it's about. But can I hear it from your words a little bit? Tell me a little bit about, and I have a few questions, but tell me a little bit about yourself, like a little bit of your history.
Oh, okay. Well, I used to be an engineer at Ford when I got out of college, and I started off in design engineering with engines, so I got a little chemistry background, a lot of physics and that sort of thing. And I think it was about 20 years into my career, I decided this is not what I wanted to do. I didn't want to work for anybody. I was tired of people taking my ideas and putting their name on them. And basically, I was disgruntled with the corporate world. So I struck out on my own and failed miserably, lost everything I had. And tried to start a business taking people who had other inventions and putting them into production. At that time, there were a lot of job shops in Detroit that were really, it was very quiet. People were laid off. There was equipment not coming to good use, and these guys were looking for work. And so we started a kind of a royalty-based business with other people's ideas. Well, I ran out of money before I could put that all together. And I went down to the Life of Virginia office and I said, teach me how to do this so I don't starve to death. And I started a whole new career and then ended up getting into financial and that sort of thing. But engineering has always been a love of mine, and particularly cars, engines, this kind of thing. But along the way, I picked up a love for spirits and wine and beer. And I realized that the way that we evaluate, nose and taste wine and spirits and beer isn't really the way it should be done. We accept a lot of things that are functionally incorrect. And nothing made that any clearer than I went to a glassblowing class at the behest of a fellow named Dale Chihuly. And he's a very famous glass artist if you don't know who he is. Mm-hmm. And Dale and I met at a wine tasting, and he talked me into taking a glassblowing class. We made a mistake in the glassblowing class, flaring out a tumbler. I took it home, put it on the shelf, and a couple months later, I come in with a bottle of cast-strength Macallan Scotch, and I was looking for a glass, and my regular tulip-style glasses were in the dishwasher, so I grabbed this thing out of the cupboard, and set it down, and grabbed a bottle.
Well, I might as well too then.
Poured a little up.
We're gonna do this, might as well do it right.
Right. And I can't let you see this one. This is the prototype for my new one. All right. Okay. So I set the glass down on the countertop. And as I picked it up, I was going through some papers, and as I picked it up, I got it right up to my nose, and I said, my God, there's no alcohol in here. This is supposed to be a cask-strength scotch. What's going on here? Well, I started thinking about it. Why does this thing not have any ethanol on it? And I went and got the tulip glasses out of my dishwasher, wiped them out, brought it in, poured them up. Plenty of ethanol, plenty of ethanol. So I figured it must be the shape of the glass that's doing something with the ethanol. So I got into it quite a little bit. 10 years later, I came up with the final design, which worked for all spirits, 40% and higher alcohol by volume. And today we're the official judging glass for over 30 major spirits competitions. So we tried to approach it from a much different standpoint of view, because the big money boys out there don't want to let us in. So we tried to approach it from the standpoint of this really works. Let's put it to work doing a good functional thing, and that would be evaluating spirits. And all of these competitions are giving medals and this type of thing. Over 120,000 spirits have been evaluated in our glass, and over 30,000 medals have been given just from those spirits evaluated in our glass alone. Well, so we made a dent there.
Yeah. Well, this isn't really a glass for people that are knocking back shots to, you know, like watching a show or something. This is somebody that when they like whiskey, or they're interested in whiskey, or they want to learn about whiskey. These are or not just whiskey, any spirits, any spirit, and the science of it is interesting, right? I mean, from what I understand, because I did some work with you, and I'll let me explain it, and you tell me if I'm right. Why don't we just do that real quick?
Sure.
So from what I understand is the spirits here, and obviously the aromas all come off of the glass in a normal glass, and it mixes in, the ethanol that you're talking about mixes in, and the sides of the glass, for whatever reason, captures it, and it pulls it away on either side, and the actual aroma of the essence of the drink that's in the center, you're able to kind of put your nose in and really kind of smell past all of the strong alcohol smell to get the real. I think that's why they like it during competitions, is because they're able to really get the tones of the spirit using this glass, right?
So ethanol is really an anesthetic. So is methanol. Almost all the alcohols will do something to numb your sensors. When you walk into the nurse's office and she rubs that on your arm, that little cotton to give you a shot, it does two things. It cleanses, but what it really does is it numbs those sensors in your skin, so you can't feel that needle go in as bad. So there's a second function there nobody ever really talks about. Well, your explanation was almost right on, but let me make a little correction here. Sure. When you swirl, all of the things start to come out of the drink, and when you compress those, you get a lot of molecular action right at the neck, where they're all trying to get out that smaller opening at the same time. As it spreads out, all the ethanol, which is the lightest, goes straight towards the edge, because their lightest molecules will move faster. And so it separates the ethanol. It looks for the exit over the edge of the rim quicker than anything else. So that's why in the center of the glass and around the center of the top of the rim there, you can smell everything you want without getting the nose numbing effect of ethanol. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah,
a lot of people say, well, this looks like a votive candle holder. I wouldn't drink out of that. We have a lot of people that assign gender names to things, and they don't like this because this looks like a lady's votive candle holder. But the people that are
right, you know, people are silly.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, but you know, I've used it to show people that normally aren't whiskey enthusiasts or appreciators. I like to use it sometimes to help them really kind of smell. The other technique I use is I tell them to hold their breath, take a shot, and then breathe out slowly to get all the flavors that they just drank from the whiskey, just to do a kind of a quick, kind of to show them that there's a little bit more to it. But I like that this actually, because that's scary for them, you know, actually taking a shot. But this is less scary for them to actually sit there and actually enjoy I mean, just as I poured it and it's sitting here under my nose, I mean, you can really take the smell from it, you know, and I think that that's pretty neat. So I really kind of enjoy that you went through these stages, and if you don't mind me saying, some failures in your past that eventually led you to keep searching and keep trying to discover things and eventually fall upon this thing. I mean, I talk about that all the time in the creative process, that the only thing that our most important tool in creativity is failure. And you know, and the want to continue and get back up and keep going, right?
Right. Well, not only that, but having an inquisitive mind and asking that next question. How
Right.
the hell did that happen? That's the
Right.
most important question you can ever ask, because it can
Right.
take you to another deeper Zen level on trying to figure out just exactly how this fits into the universe. And you'll find answers that people often overlook.
Right. Well, Bukowski, the great American poet, said, "Life will give you chances. Find them. Look for them." You know, and I
Yeah,
think that you saw yours. I think that in that, because that seems very subtle, is to pour yourself a drink and then for your mind to go, "Whoa, wait a minute, where did that smell go?" And then to investigate that is interesting.
right.
The chain reaction that would lead to something like this. I think a lot of people maybe have those experiences but don't act on them. They just kind of.
I totally agree, Alex. The one thing that I did when I visualized what was actually going on in the glass was, I said, the only way I'm going to see this is if I am a molecule, or I'm riding on a molecule. So I went and imagined myself, what happens when I swirl? How does it break the surface tension? When it comes out, all of a sudden, as I'm rising in the glass, I'm surrounded by molecules because they're getting closer, all trying to get through this smaller opening at the same time. So I'm banging into these guys all the time. And then I figured it out. I remembered something from a physics book about the diffusion of mixtures of gases, that when they come through an orifice, they expand and the lightest ones move away the fastest. That's how they, in World War II, separated U-235 and U-238. Because before the centrifuges were known, they had to do it through diffusion. It took so long to get those two isotopes separated. But at any rate, it's the lightest moves it the fastest.
It's interesting. The nuances of science and things like that are so interesting, because I think a lot of people, especially now, science is in question for some reason. And there's so many details and everything. And I also think it's interesting that you, having an engineering background, that as an engineer, all you do is problem solve. I mean, that's all you're doing on a regular basis, is finding new ways of looking at things and trying to find more efficient ways of solving problems. Um, and I,
Well,
and I'm
you actually train yourself to look at something and say, how could I make that better?
right.
So,
Yeah. Or yeah, even I'll bet you when your table's wobbly, you're the first one to put a little piece of
oh yeah.
cardboard under the table in the restaurants. But yeah, I think that's an important thing, and I got to be honest, I kind of feel like this is a lost art. I don't know if this is something that we need to really look at in terms of education, or put more value on it in schools, because and what I'm talking about is that idea, that this curiosity that you would have to have in life in general to be someone who solves problems. I mean, it requires a curiosity about the world and how it affects everything. And it kind of seems like there's this barrier, because we're naturally curious as humans, but there's something about, I don't know if it's living in a free society where everything's at your fingertips, where you go to the internet and you don't have to go to a library and do research anymore. You just type it in Google and you get an answer. I don't know if it's there's a Starbucks in every corner and you don't have to make an effort, or you can't, I don't know what it is, but something has made people lazier about finding answers to things, or they assume there's an answer already to everything, and they don't make the effort of trying to find a new solution.
I think the average person doesn't know how things work because it's not important enough to be taught anymore. I think that has an awful lot to do with it. When's the last time a kid 9 years old passed or failed a test on multiplication tables? I don't think they do that anymore. And if you don't, you have no idea of the size of things and the perspective of things. Mathematics is just a wonderful way to get a perspective on things. We don't want to teach things that are too hard. The schools have become babysitters and not so much education. And I think it's a shame. Yes, we do have to move on. There's some things we don't have to learn. But on the other hand, just a basic how to use your mind situation. The multiplication tables might be a good example of how to just how to organize your mind so you can count your change. So
there's a science. I've always been a fan of science, and I've always been I've always enjoyed. I'm not in any way a student of it or anything. I just do my research when I learn it. I trust it. I like to learn things. There's a podcast I love called Radio Lab. I listen to all the time. I think it's a fantastic show because it kind of dumbs down some of these things that are a bit too complicated. But there was what was the term? Oh man, I wish I would look. There's a specific term that just blew my mind recently. That was about it's named after a person. It's a mathematical thing where if you were okay, I'll try to explain it and maybe you'll know what the term is. Where you take let's say you take 1,000 numbers, a bunch of different numbers, not 1 through 1,000, just 1,000 just random numbers. And if you were to take the first number off of each of those, so if it's like 3,030, you take 3. And if it's 10, you take the 1. And then you just take the first numbers and you start lining them up, that you would see that there would be more 1s, then the next level, the 2s, then the 3s and the 4s, and it creates this beautiful arc. And these are random numbers that you could just throw into a pot. And there's this randomness to just in general that applies to. There's a name for that arc that happens. Even if it's random, it creates this beautiful arc. Now, when you try to change the numbers, then it screws up that arc. And I guess organizations like the IRS and stuff like that, that's a lot of times how they see fraud, by looking at people's finances and stuff. When they start to see that this arc isn't fixed or is kind of jagged, they start to see that, well, that's man has gotten involved in this. Natural randomness creates this kind of beautiful arc, which is weird to say because it's random, but there's something about it that there is order even to random things.
Well, that's exactly right. Not only that, but when let's say you write a peer-reviewed science journal paper, which I have, and I'm preparing a second one now. But it was amazing after I submitted my data, I didn't get any problems, and I asked someone, how do you make sure that the data that we have wasn't, invented by somebody? And they said, well, there are tests that you can apply to the curves and things that will let you know whether they've been man-made or not. So that I thought was incredible. And
it's so strange. I'll post, when I post this, I'll make sure I'll put this to the term down. But I'm so bad that I don't remember what it was. Oh, the Benfords Law. It's called Benfords Law. And
okay.
and I think it's incredibly interesting kind of a thing. I saw it on a show, but then I heard about it also. A friend of mine was sharing that idea with me. And there's this, it's just fascinating to me to think that, because a lot of people think that there's choices that are being made in terms of the data that you're gathering, and your piece bias sometimes. And the essence of science is that there shouldn't be any bias, where even if I'm working and I'm trying to prove a point, what I'm trying to do is prove myself wrong the entire time.
Right.
Is you're searching for flaws in your logic. And
absolutely.
And that's the mindset, and that's the difference between people that are working with, such as yourself, looking for solutions to particular problems with your inventions and stuff like that, where you're trying to discount certain things. But when you have that focal point of that thing that you're kind of looking for is to as a target, I think it's an interesting process. I don't know. I think that falls in. It's funny because I'm talking about creativity, but I do think that is part of it, because our minds are designed to just automatically always trying to find solutions. I mean, and our creative process is the same thing. It's just that inside we have a thing we want to say or do or whatever it is. And then our mind takes over and says, okay, how are we going to make this happen? And that requires...
That's quite interesting, because what I found in some recent studies with psychology of nosing and tasting is that if you smell too much ethanol and it numbs your olfactory, then your mind starts to auto-compensate. It brings up all the lists of things that you had tasted in previous tastings, and you start asking yourself, I'm supposed to see honey in here. Is there honey in here? I'm
Oh
supposed
yeah.
to be oak in here. Is there oak in here? And you end up making an evaluation on something you've done in the past instead of the sample right in front of you.
Yeah. It's kind of like hearing a new song. You're always trying to say, oh, that sounds like Bob Dylan. Oh no, he's stealing from this person. Brain needs to make order of it and needs to kind of, and it forces these things. It's kind of funny.
It's true. And you know, in the case of the see if I've got one here. I do, but I don't have it handy. A Glencairn glass. They have pounded and reiterated the functionality of the Glencairn glass so hard and so many times that even if you ask anybody how does it work, they can't tell you, but they just say, no, it's just the best glass.
It's just the best glass.
So
Yeah.
the thing that you're fighting here is real science versus reiteration.
Right. It's fascinating. It's funny because, you know, I own a marketing firm, so we design brands and logos for people. And I remember we worked on the Nevada State College logo in the early days before it was even a college. And I remember that the first logo, the negative space between the N and the S under the N looked like a shoe. Looked like it had a heel, and then it went into this thing. And nobody noticed it. But one person said, "Didn't that look like a shoe?" And it was over. It's like we had to change the whole look.
All done.
Because
right?
everybody, all they saw was a shoe. And it's funny how the brain is always hunting for that order, you know, and at finding that order and everything. And sometimes you have to work against it. So in terms of that, I mean, how I mean, you went through the whole patenting process of working on the glass and
I wrote all my own patents too, because I
did you?
couldn't trust anybody to get the concept. It was just so simple, but a patent attorney couldn't get it, but you could explain it to another scientist very easily.
Right. So you had to write it all yourself. And that the process of, you know, because literally everything, I mean, you know, even during COVID, we have people currently working on solutions for that, doing the research and trying to find a solution and inventing a solution for it. And that process of going through that, was it a collaborative process you went through, or was it just you? Did you bring in a team of people? How is that, you know, glass blowers?
All of the data and the testing took me 10 years to assemble,
Mhm.
but the actual writing of the patent, I did it myself. And what I did, and I think that I would advise any aspiring inventor to do this, was go get the Nolo Press books. There's about 5 of them on how to do your drawings so they don't get rejected, how to write a claims and this type of thing. And really, that's what I did. I bought a book, read it, and did it.
Imagine that. Did some research.
Yeah, imagine that, right?
Wait a minute. It's not on Google. I'm not supposed to do this. Sound like a couple of old farts right now. Damn Google.
Exactly.
Yeah, my neighbor just said, because there was a debate in my house about how long you can keep meat frozen in the freezer for. And I was talking to my neighbor about it, and she said, GTS, man. I said, what is that? She says, Google that shit.
I got to remember that.
And I was funny because I was saying I was just about to go in the house and Google what GTS means. But it's true. That's kind of seems like the go-to. I just did an interview recently with Marcy. She's the director of the Henderson Libraries, and how that's such a fantastic place for people to go for a resource to learn things and stuff. Yeah. And I know people don't think now it's hard because of what's going on, but I think that, you know, sometimes the act of getting out of your chair, getting away from your computer, walking into a building, doing a little research, that process is valuable. I think that, you know, going through that particular process, everything is not And that's the other thing is, I'm going a little off tangent. I hope you don't mind, but
No, no.
the idea that, you know, when you search for something online, someone you don't even know, that has no credentials that you know of, gives you information. How in what how many scenarios do you just trust, you know, no, you know, you're not going to go and you're going to see somebody cooking on a grill,
Yeah.
a burger on a grill outside. You're not going to walk up and have take that burger and just eat it. You might, and I'm sure it'd be fine actually. And I've done that in Mexico, but or you know, I've had tacos off of the thing. But I'm just saying, you know, there's not qualified data if you're really trying to do something right or get the best that you can get. And I think we're too accepting of just taking in just anything that we or believe, especially believe anything that we see on the internet, which is always feel like you have to research everything, even if it's something you believe in and it falls into your your mindset that is like, oh, that's yes, but wait a minute, and then you do the research and then you find, oh no, that's BS. You know, that
Oh,
was
that has absolutely happened to me so many times. As a matter
yeah,
of fact, right now I'm writing a little blog on my website, and we call it the Neat Spirits Evaluation Academy. And so I start from the very beginning, talking about how your smeller works, and moving on to different things, and picking out aromas and this type of thing. And it's just totally amazing how uh, you'll see something when you're immersed in writing these kinds of things. You'll see something in every day that says, "Oh, that'd be a great example for me to put
right,
in here." And like for example, I was talking about the molecules in my last one that they're all trying to get to the door first to get out at that restriction of the glass. And I said, it's just like on the subway. The lightest ones cut in line and rush in and get the best seats, and you have your briefcase and you're left standing.
right.
And so it's like the lightest things move faster, and they move. But I'm always looking for analogies and always looking for different ways to visualize.
And it's the path of least resistance. They always take the path of least resistance, you know, and I think, you know, if you
It's
dodge,
blind acceptance without questioning, and you just can't do that with anything. And we're
right.
not talking just politics or anything else here. We're talking about really basic scientific fact that people have all wrong.
Yeah. 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 You know, it's funny. There's I'm kind of, you know, just like everybody else, you know, I'm just brainstorming, you know, just like I tend to always say that, you know,
But
I'm
good
just
stuff happens, man.
everything is for me is just brainstorming, and in terms of what we're going through right now also falls into that category as far as the how we are dealing with things and how we're trying to kind of come up with solutions to new ways of doing things. My daughter right now is doing her senior year in high school online, and I go into she's in the kitchen and she's on her computer, and I can actually sit and listen to the teachers, and it's interesting. You can hear their struggle also. You know, they're trying to sort this out and figure this out, and they have to create a new set of rules based on. I mean, I actually heard a teacher say, "Okay, guys, I really need you to wear shirts. Okay, when you're still it's like a classroom. You know, you got to dress like you would dress in a classroom." He's actually taking time to explain that he needs to. The kids need to wear shirts, and although that seems silly to me, a 52-year-old man who's like going, "What's wrong with these kids? They should be wearing shirts." I'm thinking that if I'm a teenager and I'm doing this thing, screw it. I'm not going to wear a shirt. You know, I'm just going to go to class and just be cool and just do this kind of. So there's these things that we don't think about, you know, when we're dealing with these things. And that's a small example, but I mean, it is something that's a struggle, because I know a lot of teachers, and I know that they're struggling right now and trying to find solutions to this particular.
Sure, sure.
But we adapt as people, right? I mean, we try to figure things out as we go, and I'm feeling optimistic that eventually, I think that the school system may, if it keeps its eyes open, learn something from this. I mean,
I hope so. I think that this was the absolute perfect opportunity for us to just go back and examine how we do things,
right.
because this won't be the last. And if we're not prepared as badly as we weren't prepared for this one in the future, who knows if it's any more serious? You know, we could have another Black Death and not realize that it comes from rat fleas for until there's only 3 people left on the face of the earth. You know, how do we know?
Yeah,
It's,
we don't.
we have to learn how to control these things. We have to learn how to get a handle on it, and we have to have a fast track to get vaccines.
Yeah, you know, it's just like the mind's like a muscle, just like anything else, right? And I think that the more you use it, the more adept it is, and more. I mean, you need to exercise your mind just like you exercise your body. And I think that the more you exercise your mind in whatever way possible, it prepares you for things like this, right? This is when the world turns up, you know, turns upside down. The people that have been working on this part of their mind of trying to find solutions are the ones that are going to excel. You know, I had a client tell me one time that what COVID has done is it is just accelerated the future for a business. Where
I
business,
totally believe that. Absolutely.
yeah, where businesses, if they didn't have a good model, it's clear now that they didn't have a good model because they're struggling. If you had a good model and were able to adapt, you're surviving. I'm not saying you're thriving, you're surviving, right? So
Just look at the stock market and look at what Amazon has done
mhm,
versus the retailers that are going bust every week.
right.
Famous names: Macy's, Sears,
Huh.
Bye Bye. You know, it's
Yeah.
it's amazing. They relied on their old models too long. They sat back. They weren't keeping up with the times. And when it hit, and they had to make changes, they couldn't. They couldn't do it fast enough. So they lost everything.
Yeah, and although I'm not an academic, I am somebody who uses creativity all the time, and I am curious about that side of it, and that is kind of my point of this whole thing of what I'm trying to do, is because,
Sure.
and like I've been saying to everybody, I'm interviewing you, and I like you very much, and I think you're really interested in everything, but you're not important to me at the moment. Who's important to me is the people listening to you, the
Mhm.
people that are maybe have an idea that they haven't thought of acting on, and they think, oh, you know
Sure.
what, maybe I should try to make this a thing. Maybe, you know, that's who I want to listen. And when I was a kid, I was exposed to a lot of different artists and different people, and I had a chance to talk to people, and I remember an artist when he looked at my art, and I was really young, and he said, that's really good, you got to keep going, never sell anything that you've drawn, no matter how small it is, for less than $300. That stuck in my head. I don't know why, but that stuck in my head. But there's people that offer advice, and if you're smart, you'll listen. And some people don't have access to that advice. So that's kind of what I'm trying to do, is kind of
Well,
create a,
you know, and it's funny how things evolve too. Juan Miro and Pablo Picasso were great realist painters when they were
oh
young.
yeah. Yeah.
You can see in Barcelona in the Picasso Museum, there's this, I believe it's a coronation that's taking place that he painted, and it is picture perfect. And people say, oh, Picasso looks like a bunch of kids' drawings and this kind of thing. But he evolved to the things that he thought were necessary. He became not the minimalist that Juan Miro did, but certainly his art was about, let's convey as much as possible with as little as possible.
Right.
And
Well, you have, my art teacher said you have to master the craft before you can break the rules. You know, you have to actually get
yes,
to the point where you really understand it. And plus, you know, you're right. You're 100% right about that. And I think that that's a really, actually a really profound point, because I think that people are jumping to Picasso too often. I think that in the world, I think people are trying to be Picasso.
they're starting out in how he was finished up.
Yeah. You know, there's this thing where they're like, how am I different? I've always had this discussion too with people in terms of marketing. You know, there's some marketers, and they're wrong. They say you got to find how you're different. That's nonsense. Because if you're a plumber, you plumb just like any other plumber. You fix pipes. There's nothing different. It's the
Yeah,
manner in which you do it.
and it's the
That's it.
presentation of what you do.
Yeah, it's the manner in which you do it that's different, and that's what you can talk about. It's not what you're not doing anything different. And I think that that's something that's also and I see it a lot with young people, and I talk to a lot of young people and stuff, and they want to start off being this amazing thing, and they haven't earned the right to do it yet. You gotta get to there. You know, like when they want to be a musician, they'll say, well, I want to be this kind of a singer. And I say, who's your favorite artist? And they'll tell me. And I say, well, who's their inspiration? And they won't know. And so we'll figure out who that artist's inspiration is. And then learn everything you can about the person they're inspired by. And then learn whose their inspiration is. And then go down the line, and eventually you'll get to Robert Johnson. You know, eventually, but you know, so I've always had that same discussion with them, and then they don't know who I'm talking about, and they write down Robert Johnson. I've seen him write down, you know, anyway, but I think that's important, is the research and the effort that you make, and the studying and looking back at your work, and trying to just beat yourself, you know, improve on your own work, I think, instead of trying to improve on everyone else's work.
Well, you also have to you have to sit back and take a look at what you did and say, you know, what did I really accomplish? Did I get a message across? Did I accomplish what I wanted to do? Could I have done it differently? And if I was going to do it differently, let's just paint another haystack with blues this time, or whatever. You know, you get my my point. The Monet's haystacks, but and it's the same way with inventing. You know, well, we can fix this. Well, it doesn't do exactly what we want it to do, but oh my God, does this other thing really fantastic? let's take that and let that go over here.
Right.
Let's go. Yeah. So.
But if it can't.
So
solve
it's an evolution.
problem, but if it solves one really well, it's worth looking at. It's worth working on.
Being self-critical and not working towards a hard objective. I've got to do this in a certain amount of time, and it has to do exactly this. You know, setting those kind of goals really get more in your way than starting to look at principles and figure out how they're applied, and then building on that. How can I use this in what I'm doing? You know, and it's more and trying something new and trying to disprove it sometimes that makes it come true.
Right. So if you were to speak to some young potential inventors, what are kind of the things that you would warn them about?
Well, first of all, my mantra is read, learn, apply. Mm-hmm. But along that way is always check your sources. Always make sure that you're reading the real stuff. Always make sure that you're as close to the truth as possible, and that you're you know, comparing across maybe even different disciplines to see if the same processes hold true across lines. Always ask that next question. How the hell did that happen? That's the most important question you can ask. The second most important question is, how do I find out? So I think if just natural inquisitiveness, but not giving up. I'll tell you, it took me from 2002, when I made the mistake in the glassblowing class, to 2012, working every day on it to come up with what was the right shape to make this thing work. And there was a lot of math in there. There was a lot of trials and a lot of panel discussions and talking with people who had good noses and just a whole lot of stuff before we finally were confident enough that in every trial we did with other people, our 3 major hits, this one came out as number 1 every time. Then we were cocksure that we had the right answer. But I was in no hurry to go rush something to market. It isn't all about the money. I mean, if you don't have some altruistic point of view or motivation, you'll get caught up in the profit picture, and you'll never accomplish what was in your mind to begin with.
I think it's really unbelievably good advice. I think that even the whole story of that you kind of laid out there, I think is really good advice also for people to learn that, if just I mean, I know we keep repeating it, but so many great things came from that kind of a story, where somebody just didn't give up on something, or at least changed the way they are looking at something, and found a new pathway.
Let's just take a look at what I think is probably the world's most brilliant man alive today, and that's Elon Musk.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's kind of a turd when he's interviewed and spoken a blunt. And
he says things that scare me sometimes.
He is, and he's way out there, believe me. And his world doesn't exist in the same world that ours does, yeah. Until it's all about the cars that are rolling off the assembly line. And this guy, when you can land a rocket on a pad in the ocean with the waves rocking it and land it backwards back down the same way that it started. The things that they've done are just incredible. And to me, he's a hero because he doesn't listen to criticism. And the one thing that about my business that I follow, number one, I don't have enough money, but to do this, but his point is he doesn't do any advertising. There is no advertising budget in Tesla. Everything that you hear about Tesla's word of mouth or a press report or somebody wrote up or investigated or had a conversation with one of his scientists or something.
There's no advertising budget, but there is marketing. I mean, we've got a Tesla going around the earth playing David Bowie right now. That's a pretty good.
Yeah, I realize that. Yeah, but I mean, it wasn't let's go capture the hearts and minds of this demographic and that sort of thing. It was about
no tradition.
If we speak the truth long enough and hard enough and often enough, and we can show progression in the truth and getting closer and closer to real knowledge, then people will start to gravitate to us. And I think that's what's happening with Tesla.
Yeah, he's a very interesting guy. I think that he's doing some very, very some odd things, but some pretty powerful and things that are going to definitely make a big difference in the world. It's ironic that he owns Tesla, because I think Tesla himself was very much like that as well.
No question about it.
Yeah, and that's that whole thing is just that man's story. If anybody doesn't know who Nikola Tesla is, who's listening to this, I'd be surprised. But if you don't, learn about who that is and learn about the things he did, because there's a lot of things that we use now.
At the same time, read the story about Edison and realize that in the fight, that the things that Edison did with Henry Ford's money and a lot of other people's money really beat Tesla down when he really had a better idea.
Right.
And so
he was about the craft.
Yeah. And the power struggle and money versus truth, that's a great lesson in that whole comparison between Edison and Tesla.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, definitely. Anyway, George, hey, thank you so much. Is there anything you want to tell anybody about, or anything? I'll have your website, and I'll play after this. I'll play the little video of your product. But is there anything going on?
Great.
Any new inventions?
No. Okay, so we are working on a lot of things, and of course, you can't just stop with spirits. Spirits was the easiest because there's so much ethanol. All we had to do is figure out how to move the ethanol. Mm-hmm. With beer, it's a little bit different, but we will be releasing a set of beer glasses and a wine glass. Wine glass is about 2 years down the road. We're having some real fundamental belief problems with that. So we have to resolve in our own minds that we're really going down the right path. We think we are, but there's a lot of, we're looking at how do how do we face that off against the competition? And frankly, they are, what we found out is that they're so far away from the truth that it shouldn't be difficult. But again, we are going to have something that looks like something you never saw before. This does not look like a tulip glass. Your wine glasses won't look like wine glasses either. So,
well, I'm definitely gonna keep in tune for that. I definitely want to get some of those myself. I think that'd be great. Anything to enhance my enjoyment of the spirits, right? Especially now. That's.
Well, listen, I would also say, you know, always remember to ask that next question. And everybody just stay safe. We get through this pretty quick. And when we go back to normal, just remember it never will be normal again. It's going to be new. Figure out how to use it. Figure out how to get the most out of it.
That's great. That's great advice. Thanks again, my friend.
Thank you, sir.